Hi, I'm John, and today I'm going to talk about Linux distro hopping in 2025. Kind of something I was doing quite a bit, probably more than I did any other year. Most of the time, I would just stay with the old reliable, and I'd stay with Linux Mint, which I have done basically for anything that I do that's really serious or something that I can't have any mistakes or don't want to have any problems with. Now, most Linux distributions I don't have any problem with, but Linux Mint seems to work best for my situation, which is running a business, doing that kind of thing. But this last year, we had a situation where my son, he got into Linux this last year, and he started to do some other things because he did some gaming, and he used a Steam Deck and was playing around with that a little bit. And he said, Dad used that Linux operating system. Why don't I try it? And, he reads a lot of things about it. He just doesn't take my word for it. He's no fool. You can't do that. You've got to find it for yourself. You've got to see whether it's going to be something that's going to work for you. Anyway, after starting out, he started out with something that was kind of hard to install. One of those distributions that were difficult, but he, I think, we got him a little started on Linux Mint just to try things out, because I said, go with the easy thing and just put it on there and it'll be fine. And he did, and he liked it. But then he started playing around with other things and reading other things, and CachyOS is one of those things I think he totally got into, and it's something that's more of a bleeding edge type of thing, and really enjoys it. So that was a big deal for 2025. I think he's done with Windows. I don't think he has anything to do with Windows except for his work, and I think that's it. But I thought it was interesting that he came around, and I can remember 4 years ago when I was talking about this, and he goes, he said to my daughter, he said, oh yeah, Dad's into some weird operating system. And for a lot of people, that's the way they think about it. They think it's really weird, but if they're in the Windows world and they're, this is all there is, or Mac, this is all there is, nothing could be further from the truth. And you don't even see it until you have application. I came around to it the same way he did, through a back door. Like, I got a Raspberry Pi just because I wanted to play around with Raspberry Pi, and I went, well, what is this? And I find out it's Linux, and I went, I don't need Windows at all anymore. And that's kind of what he came to also, because he was coming in from the gaming side. One of the other, I'm going to go through some of the different distributions I distro hopped with this year. Kubuntu, it's something that I always do, and I tried Questing Quokka, the 25.10 version. And I want to say that it seemed to be still on the KDE Plasma desktop a little bit glitchy. I still had some issues with it. And I'm almost coming to the point where I don't like the KDE Plasma desktop anymore. Even though it's really good, there's just something about it that is it too much like Windows? I don't know. There's just something about it I don't really like so much anymore. And I'm back to the Cinnamon desktop on Linux Mint. In fact, I kept going back to Linux Mint because it absolutely worked and I didn't have any problems like that. But KDE Plasma, I tend to have problems with that no matter what distribution I'm using. Little things. And I'm one of those people that if there's one little thing that's really bugging me, I'll hop and do something else. So anyway, Kubuntu's always something I've used now and again. And for a while, I used it kind of as a daily driver, but I'm not wild about the Plasma desktop anymore. Now, Lubuntu is another flavor of Ubuntu, which is the LXQT desktop. And I really liked it. I used not the stable version, but the Questing Quokka version, 25.10. And I got to tell you, I really liked it. Really worked well, very fast and quick, and that has a lot to do with that LXQT desktop. Probably my number one hop. I mean, I think that one was kind of the best for me, as an alternative to something like Linux Mint. Linux Mint is my golden child. I won't give it up because it just works for me. And Lubuntu, though, was like that. One thing I did read in their blog, they were talking about they didn't have enough people working on the project, and so the latest version of it was kind of a ho-hum thing, basically. I don't know. If you don't got enough people working on the project, yeah, it could be that way. But, it all depends on your applications and what you're trying to run. I kept trying MX Linux. I kept doing it. And it's fast, but I'm not wild about the XFCE desktop. And I don't really like KDE Plasma Desktop anymore. I didn't try Fluxbox. I didn't do any of that. But I always kind of go back to it and think, okay, I like some things about it, how clear it is on the screen. It just looks good. But it's not really, for me, conducive to doing what I do. I also tried this year, I tried Zorin, and I like it as a desktop. It's really nice. But there was a couple of things I didn't like about it. I think I had some trouble getting real VNC to run and that type of thing. I think it is really nice, and I think it's really stable. Just a good distribution. Once again, looking a lot like Windows, which is fine, but there's something about looking like Windows that isn't so great. I'd rather just go with my Cinnamon desktop and get a different theme that's very easy to use and make it look like, Windows XP if I wanted to. Now I don't do that. I just keep the Cinnamon desktop. But anyway, Zorin's a nice one too. Here's one that I had a problem with, Anduin OS. I couldn't even get this sucker installed. It was just horrible. And that's not their fault. I'm sure that has something to do with my hardware. And it would arrest during the setup, that type of thing. So I just gave up on it. Also tried OpenSUSE. Really nice. One of the things, though, about these independent distributions is that they have different terminal commands, and so I don't want to relearn those. So once I got into the Debian Ubuntu world, I like terminal commands that are based off that, not other things. So if you're going to start out in Linux, you either kind of pick one way or the other. You either go Debian Ubuntu, or you go Arch, or you go independent. That's it. And once you get used to that, that's probably the way you're going to go from then on. That's what I found out. Anyway, I liked OpenSUSE, and it's really a nice OS. Nothing wrong with it. And it installed very well on everything that I had. I tried Fedora, and I liked it very much, but once again, the commands and things that I used in the terminal didn't, comport with what I've learned. And, shame on me for not learning other things. And I'm going to make 2026 a year that I really play around with Arch Linux. And I'm going to see what all the buzz is about. Because if I start crowing about Debian, Ubuntu-based stuff, there'll be some Arch guys that will definitely flame me on the comments. You guys are merciless. And I know you're really into it, and technically it takes a little bit more, I think, to use it, but I think sometimes they look at Ubuntu-based stuff and that's for dummies. Nothing could be further from the truth, but boy, they'll let you know about it. And some people told me, hey, you'll get that. But it's something I'm going to try a little bit harder at and see if I can kind of expand my knowledge as kind of a hobby, Ubuntu, I did just straight Ubuntu, the long-term version, not the cutting-edge version. In fact, I did the long-term version, and it worked very well, 24.04, and I guess there's an update coming later or sometime mid-2026, which will be 26.04, which will be great. And I think I got it working really nice. But once again, if you're used to this kind of thing, something that's Ubuntu-based, you won't have a problem with it. I'm not wild about the where by default they put some things. I don't really like that. And I think that Linux Mint really made it even more user-friendly than what Ubuntu was. So it's great. And I should get into it for things like the server and play around with that a little bit. And it's just something I should know better. So I'm going to delve into that, but not through things like Kubuntu or anything like that. So I'll just do straight Ubuntu or try an Ubuntu server, I guess. I tried Pop! OS again, I don't know. They're trying to sell computers, and that's great. You can do whatever you want to do. I think the computers seem a little bit overpriced, but maybe I'm wrong. It's just fine if you like that GNOME desktop. I mean, it's nice. But there's just something about it, when they say Pop! OS, for me, it doesn't pop. I also played around with Debian, just in the different versions of the desktops and things that you can get with it. It's something I should know better, but I think all those people, like the people at Canonical or, Ubuntu, they really took it to that next level. And I'm glad there's people doing Debian, but I wouldn't use it as an everyday driver or anything like that. It needed to be more user-friendly than even it was, and there'll be some people that'll just really chew on me for that. But it's very important. It's very good, but it's not as developed as far as the desktop that I think it should be, but I wish it was. And that being said, they have KDE Plasma, they have all these different XFCE, you can get Cinnamon. I mean, you can get all these desktops for it, but things like where the software packaging and things like that, I just think it's a little bit easier with some of these other distributions. I must just be lazy. I must just be a jerk, but I like those. And I like distributions where that software package manager is obvious and intuitive and doesn't have any kind of learning curve on it. I did try Manjaro a little bit, but once again, I haven't gone down that road with anything that was more Arch-based. And some people out there who absolutely hate me for talking about it, it says right on this, on their website, taking the raw power and flexibility of Arch Linux and making it more accessible to a greater audience. I had people that would tell me, it's not based on Arch. Stop saying that. It's not based on Arch. Well, it says it right on their website. Either it is or it isn't. And there's some Arch guys that say they'll never listen to me again, and that's fine because I say this. And this is where I kind of get into the Arch people, that there tends to be a snob factor. And sorry, guys, but it does seem to be there. I think people that are into Arch Linux are probably technically much better than the rest of us. But I think they also look down on people. Debian and Ubuntu are just a bunch of idiots. So, a bunch of simpletons or something like that. Hate to say it, but I've got nothing but kind of a negative vibe from people that comment and leave comments, and it has to do with Arch. Oh, heaven help me if I ever said something wrong about Arch, or if I said something that was not totally complimentary, and you guys are so much better than we are, and stop doing that. It's just different ways of doing it. But I will say this: once you go down one of these roads or the other, whether it's an independent distribution, not really based on anything, but it's independent, or something that's Debian Ubuntu based, or if it's Arch based, you're going to go down one of these roads. And whatever road you choose early on is probably the road you're going to go down. And you're not going to go back to the others and not go, hey, if you're into Arch, you're probably not going to go back to something that's Debian or Ubuntu based. You're just not going to do it. And it has to do with commands and how it's functioning. It's really, these are the differences in Linux. When you look in Distro Watch and you see all these different operating systems, it's not about the individual thing, but there's 3 different camps: independent, Debian Ubuntu, or Arch Linux. I mean, that's it. You pick one of those and then you go down that road and learn. And I think there's something to be said. It takes more knowledge and a little bit more, digging in to do Arch Linux. I do think, I think a lot of those people know more than a lot of us that are just using something like Mint because it's easy, it's simple, and it gets my life done, So anyway, that's some of the things I distro hopped around with this year, and just kind of general thoughts about them. I'm always coming back to Linux Mint. It's the thing I glommed on right away. And it ends up for me to be the best thing that I could use. And everybody's different. And that's the great thing about Linux distributions. You do have choices, whereas Windows, you don't have a choice. With Mac, you don't have a choice. You don't get a lot of different flavors of those. That's what's really great about it. But it also causes people some confusion. I think when they're coming to it from Windows or from Mac, and they don't know anything about it, especially somebody who's kind of a real basic computer user. And I'm not saying, you couldn't do everything that you wanted to do on Linux Mint. You can, but it's also very easy and very simple. That also goes for Lubuntu. That goes for Kubuntu. Ubuntu itself. I will say some of the Arch stuff, I think you've got to get a little more technical. And usually when they're talking about that, they're talking about something that's, a little bit more on the bleeding edge. And they want the greatest drivers, the newest stuff, the newest kernel, that type of thing. And that's great for some people. And if they're really driving really, really good hardware for gaming or something like that, I get that. And it could be for other things as well. I don't know. So anyway, I thought I'd just talk about what was going on this year as far as Linux distro hopping. I think I tend to do it sometimes just to do it to have something to do, or that I'm looking for kind of a dopamine hit going, oh, right, this is really great. Boy, I'm going to love this. And then I come back to it and go, yeah, it's really great, but then it's got this or that, and I don't really like that. I'm going back to Linux Mint, and because it just works, and that's kind of where I come to. I'm a big Mint fan. I can't change that. Out of all the distributions, all of them that I've tried, and I've tried more than this, I found it to be the easiest, most reliable, and I just couldn't say anything better about it. It just works for me. So Anyway, it's been an interesting year of distro hopping and playing around with different things. Even this YouTube channel, even though I get in and do a video once in a while, there was a period of time I had a little bit of a health problem and I couldn't mess around with anything or talk about anything. And sometimes I think I'd like to talk about something other than Linux distributions. Otherwise, people think that's all I'm about, and it's just not the case. Not that anybody cares what I'm all about. They shouldn't, right? None of us are really that important, and even the tech people that we tend to make fun of, the big shots, they're not that interesting either. So you have to just take things in stride, and that's why I don't always do videos like on a regular basis, always coming out with something. Because then what's my motivation? Do I really have something to say? If I don't really have something to say and I'm just doing it just to make sure that people listen to me or something like that, well, it kind of defeats the whole purpose. So anyway, that's what happened with Linux distro hopping this year for me. Leave a comment if you've got some other experiences. If you're an Arch guy and you hate me, go ahead and leave your comment. I know you hate me, but I love you still. And I'm going to try Arch Linux and get into it this next year. So I trust that you think it's the best. I'm going to see if it's the best, and I'm really going to play around with it. And it probably is. Who knows? But I like what I'm using. So anyway, leave comments. Let me know what you hopped around with. And I've got to get my hopping also a little bit broader, too. I've got to get more of these obscure distributions. And yeah, I don't think it's going to change any of my minds. Like, I'm not going to all of a sudden find something that's like number 150 on the distro watch list and go, wow, that's really great. That does things. I probably isn't going to happen, because I think that those first 20 or so that are in that list are probably the thing for most people. One of those is going to do the job, and you don't really need to look much further elsewhere. It's funny how Linux is. It's broadly spread, lots of different opinions and software versions, but you'll have to find what works for you and what makes you happy. That's the bottom line. Anyway, I hope you have a great 2026, and we'll be talking to you again soon.